ننتقل إلى آخر حلقة نقاش عندنا، والغريب أن تكون هذه الحلقة مرتبطة بمفهوم يعيدنا إلى الأشياء الأولى، مرتبطة بمفهوم الحنين وبشكل آخر بالنوستالجيا. ولكن هذا الحنين حنين مختلف، ليس الحنين بما نعرفه دائما، بل هو حنين رقمي ديجيتال. هذه الحلقة النقاش ستكون بعنوان الفن الرقمي والهوية عن الحنين الرقمي. مديرة الحوار الأستاذة مارني بيني، وهي قيمة فنية ومختصة في الفن المعاصر. كذلك لدينا الأستاذة جيهان شو، والأستاذ إلياس سويدي، وبيير فوترل سيكونون معنا، فيتفضلون إلى المنصة. طبعا سعيدين إنه إلياس كذلك كان معنا أمس واليوم معنا. المرة الأولى كان مودريتر، الآن ضيف. حياكم الله، تفضلوا.
Hello, guys.
Hi, guys. So we've just introduced you guys, and we're about to start the panel discussion, just to get our whole panel together here. So I guess before we start, if everyone could just introduce them, just a real quick introduction, maybe like 2 sentences, that would be great. Elias, you want to go first?
Yeah, okay. Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to see you again today. I'm an architect, and I'm the founder of Ruin to Reality, which is an application that won an award in Dubai Design Week in 2018. And then I got to develop it on a project in Beirut in 2019. The application aims at reconnecting you with your cultural heritage. So basically, you would go to any demolished historical site, and through a QR code and a virtual reality device, you could see what used to stand there and help you reconnect with your individual memories to help us recreate together from those individual memories the collective memory of a city or the collective memory of a place. I am also always very touched and very sensitive to the idea and the concepts of ruins and memory in the context of cities and urban life.
Great, thank you. Gian, do you want to go next?
Sure. Thank you again for having me. It's a pleasure to be able to speak and share. My name is Jahan Chu. I am the founder of Kinetic. We are one of the earliest blockchain and crypto investors in Asia. We have been investing in the space since 2016, and I've been in the space since 2013, helping to start things like the Ethereum meetup. And we've been very deeply involved in investing in the NFT space and the metaverse space. And I have personally a very strong relationship to the art world, having been at Sotheby's for many years and supporting many non-for-profit art organizations like Parasite Art Space, and also having been an art advisor for many years. So thanks again for having me.
Great, thank you. And Pierre?
So hi everyone, I'm Pierre. I'm one of the 3 members of Obvious. Thank you for having me here today. Obvious is a collective of artists doing art with a machine learning algorithm, also called AI. We use AI as a tool to create artworks, and we talk about AI and new technology and the relationship we have as a society with those new technology. So we use AI as a tool, and it's also our subject. And also something interesting is that we are also into NFTs for a very long time now, for 4 years. So it's basically very long time in the NFT place. So yeah, we are creating digital art on Super Art from 2018, and we also produce physical pieces as a collective.
Great, thank you so much. And just for a quick couple of words about me, I'm a contemporary art curator. I focus in science and technology, and I'm excited to be moderating this panel with these rock stars. We've already had a really fruitful, interesting conversation all together online. Mostly, Pierre, we missed you. We did, but we thought about you, and we did talk about you in the best of ways. So I just want to kick it off with just a kind of abstract, wild question here. But can you guys remember what your first digital artwork that you saw was? And do you remember what you thought when you saw it?
Who wants to go first? Fine.
Sure, I'll take it. Yeah, the first digital artwork that I remember, I'm sure I've seen others, but the first one that made an impression on me was actually the work of Younghae Chang Heavy Industries. This was a Korean collective that did a work in text and music. And it was basically, I guess you could call it poetry or prose that flashed on the screen and had this kind of jazzy background. And this is a work that was shown at the New Museum, the Rhizome program in New York. It was really beautiful. And although it wasn't an NFT, this was back in, I think, 2009 or 10 or something like that. It made such a strong impression because I had never really seen digital art so simple and so kind of pared back. It was really beautiful.
Great, thank you. It sounds amazing. Who wants to go next?
Pierre? No, Pierre, can you recall yours?
Yeah. For me, it's very difficult to say when it's the first time that you have seen digital art because I'm very young and I've been there for since I know art and since I'm discovering this world. So something that really matters to me was when I saw Miguel Chevalier, an installation by Miguel Chevalier in Paris. And I remember that time it was the first time that projection mapping and such arts was very touching me, and that was very, very cool experience. But I remember a lot also the moment where I discovered this whole NFT field, and that was also a cool moment where you discovered artists that you didn't expect them to be like recognized as artists, and finally they found like the way to explain themselves. So that was also another cool moment.
I can totally and perfectly connect with you, Pierre, on this. We were somehow raised with digital art, or at least digital stuff surrounding us, and without necessarily knowing which one is art and which one is not. Something that I can recall that has definitely left an impact is at the Serpentine in London, when an animation of one of Zaha Hadid's paintings was totally animated, and you were, by using a VR also, you could like step into the painting and the drawing would become everywhere around you, and it's not two-dimensional anymore, but it's three-dimensional, and it becomes a whole experience, like as if you're inside the painting. And this is something that left a giant mark on me as well.
Yeah, that's great. It's a great point to talk about sort of the distinction between digital art and what that is. And, you know, when you're from a certain perspective, that maybe this distinction isn't such a distinction. I think that that's a really interesting thing based on, you know, the different generations. Yeah, so to expand on that, I'm interested to know when each of us sort of thinks about cultural artifacts in the digital space, and you think about memory and nostalgia, how do you think that the digital space has enhanced or contributed to digital nostalgia and memory, and what do you think, if anything, has been lost?
We are at the end of the day products and outcomes of those memories, and those just a process of different stories. We're here to tell a story, and we've been living through those stories. So somehow anything we see or anything we engage with or interact with will trigger somewhere in our minds a certain memory, whether it is individual, that is strictly related to me, or whether it's more collective and it's more related to the community or to the city in which I live in. It's absolutely going to trigger that. So there is no room for any piece, digital or not without it triggering at some point the sense of memory inside you. And on the idea of being lost, we live in a very fast-paced world, and a lot is being lost. And if it doesn't touch on your emotion, if it doesn't touch on your experience and really give you a very impact on the moment itself, it might just go away, and then you're gonna live on to the next experience that is really gonna touch on that emotion.
Yeah, this is a great point. Do you want to talk a little bit about your app and?
Yeah, sure. So in Ruined to Reality, when I wanted to rebuild Martyr Square in Beirut, it was I wanted to take it back to the 1960s, and I chose the 1960s because I wanted to touch on the generation that is still living today, so that people can really relate to what it used to be. And I remodeled the construction of the buildings and the streets based on history books and photographs, but it was only interesting when I sat down with people who used to live back there and then used to know how it used to be, and they started correcting the small details of that model. And those small memories, those small individual memories were as important, even more important than all the history books that I've looked into it.
That's very, very interesting, and a really amazing example and perspective of talking about history, talking about what doesn't exist anymore, and recreating that, and how one can be mindful of that, and how one can be intentional about that as well in the digital space. Pierre, do you have an idea about cultural artifacts living in the digital space? This is a little bit of your wheelhouse as an artist.
Yeah. I really like the idea of merging past and future. When you talk about digital, you have those idea of the future, and artifacts and memories are from the past. And you talk about how those two time impact you and this is something interesting, because in our art we try to reinterpret the past with technology and artificial intelligence. When we create like we did for the King Fahd Museum, calligraphy based on traditional calligraphy, Arabic calligraphy, and you create futuristic artwork with that. The idea is always to do bridges. I don't like the opposition between the future and the past. I like to merge them, and I like to, as an artist, to bring people in the future with technologies. And the cool thing with AI algorithm, the one we use, is that you can basically create a symbol of this past and project it in the future. So if you train on old data set, for example, we work with Lascaux, you know, the cave arts in south of France. When you create such a parallel, when you create the first traditional art forms with modern like algorithm, you do those bridges between the old and the new. And this is something we like to do, and we'd like to push further.
Great. So, Jihan, do you have an idea about or thoughts about cultural artifacts in a digital space, especially as a collector and someone who is really so interesting in the blockchain world and crypto and NFTs?
Sure. You know, I might propose, just for the sake of controversy, maybe the other side of that argument, which is maybe the end of memory through technology. It's a little dramatic, but you know, a little bit. Maybe this idea that through blockchain technology combined with, you know, a panopticon and kind of the all-seeing eye of digitization and kind of CCTV and cameras, that everything gets recorded. For those of you who've read Snow Crash, like this kind of canon literature for cyberpunk culture and you know, metaverse, there's a character in Snow Crash which is the gargoyle, and the gargoyle has like all this gear, and they just go around and they record everything, all speech, all video, it's all recorded. And with the blockchain, we start to have this eternal memory, which kind of cuts out this idea that memory is somehow selective. Everything is recorded, everything is stored. And we start to lose this idea that ideas can be lost. And so maybe there's something there where this kind of subject, this selectivity of what we experience goes away and everything is preserved. And then that somehow morphs into something else. So why is it important? Because I think we have to maybe develop different types of platforms and different types of ways to discern when the idea of fading memories and what we can actually process becomes less important.
I love it. I like drama. It's good. Pierre, Elias, do you have any comments, thoughts on this controversial standpoint? Thoughts?
Actually, we were discussing this on breakfast this morning.
We were.
Whether, to what extent should we keep on preserving art pieces, and how do we choose, like, which art should we keep and which not, which to destroy or let them go anyway. And the same debate happens in architecture as well. I mean, I was referring to the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and should we let it go? We're spending millions of euros to just reinforce the soil around it to keep it standing. Should we let it go and just allow the process for it to die, to embrace its ruin? Or should we keep on reinforcing that tower so that it stays the same and commemorating the object?
Yeah, exactly. And we were just talking about it with the Salvador Dali Museum, and they making them recreating Salvador Dali through an AI technology. And what does that do to Salvador Dali and Salvador Dali's memory, for better or for worse? And we were just talking about all of those different things. And yeah, it really changes memory when memory is distilled in a way, and also distilled by certain folks. So Gian, I think you have a really good dystopian no, I'm kidding, but I mean,
it's not unhopeful. It's not unhopeful. I mean, I think that what's interesting is that with blockchain and this idea that blockchain can store things quote unquote forever, let's just say that that's true and not argue about whether it is or it isn't, but just assuming that it's true, then it kind of changes the role of institutions and museums, right? From preserving physical objects to I think it actually kind of changes the role of curation, makes curation much more important and physical storage much less important. When everything gets stored, it just creates this archive of everything, but it also creates a ton of noise. And it becomes much more important for curators to have sufficient platform and ways to even promote, which then starts to kind of bleed into social media and how kind of things that are slightly more maybe academia, maybe arguably objective, versus social media, which is extremely subjective, and that kind of combining. So it'll be interesting to see how digitization and digital art and digitally native art starts to change the nature of kind of curation and institutions.
Yes, definitely. I'll just comment on that since I am a curator and I think about this a lot. I love that these technologies really empower the artists and that they're able to upload their work. They don't need to go through a gallery. They don't need to go through a museum. All the structures that have been hindering and not necessarily fair throughout art history, and the idea of preservation art and whose narrative gets preserved and whose doesn't. But which is kind of what's happening right now, as long as you decide to upload your own thing, is also challenging because it's a lot of noise, and then people shut off because it's too much noise, and you have to weed through that. So I think that the idea of curation and education, especially around digital arts, is extremely important because of many reasons, one of which preservation narratives and the narratives that will last, but also because there is a lot of education to be had about digital art and how that's an art form and why that's an art form, and how digital art has actually done a lot of expanding the notion of what is art and what will be left with, and what will those narratives be left with, and what is possible now that never was. Like your app, for example, would not have been possible before. So it wouldn't have even been a perspective that you could have had or shared with people. Yeah. Pierre, do you have any thoughts? Oh.
Yeah, if I can comment on the curation, this is something that really matters to me, because I'm a digital artist, but I also create physical pieces. So my NFTs goes in the digital world, and my physical pieces go in the traditional art market world, and I can see the differences. And in the end, what is very interesting is that for the classical painting, for example, or painting who were in the Hermitage Museum, who were at Christie's, etc., you have validation through those curations. So by museum, by institutions, by auction house, and this is the way your works goes, and after that you build your career on those institutions, and then you begin more appreciated by the people, and more and your art you can see our art more. But on the other hand, so this lack of institution in the NFTs is something also interesting, because you have very talented artists who would not have those academic and those relationship to this institution, who are now propulsed on the front line. But on the other hand, if you go on OpenSea and create an artwork, that doesn't mean that you will have success. There is now thousands of artists who do not meet success, and because it's digital. So it's like always in the world, it's not blank or black, white or black. It's gray. So you need to have those institutions go in the digital, and you also need to have a digital artist who goes in those big institutions, and that's what you begin to see. Like, for example, Christie's and Sotheby's are really into this. You can see a lot of projects with British Museum, MoMA recently. A lot of museums are taking the path to digital, and this is something that must have occur, because if you have too much people do not know what's the difference between what's really interesting art and what's something normal. I would not go in what's good and what's bad, because that's not the way it works in curation. But I would say because you have a lot of people, you have something that could be interesting or not. But this is the same in the art world. I mean, everybody can paint, everybody can sculpt, but what's interesting behind it is the message and the techniques, and that's the most important in the end. Having a strong message as an artist. And the digital and the physical worlds are not like opposite worlds. They are worlds who meet themselves, and it's at those intersections that it is interesting to me.
Yeah, if I can comment on that, because I think it's a super interesting point. It seems that this kind of arena of digitization, digitally native art and digitally native platforms, it is decentralizing a lot of these institutions, not just financial institutions, but cultural institutions. And what we're seeing is artists who are not, I mean, by my kind of estimation, not interesting. And I would go as far as to say not good. Have massive platforms. And so it's interesting I think we're going to go through a phase, this kind of transition period, where the art world and the art audiences, it's going to go through this kind of tunnel where it's great because a lot more people are coming into the art world. A lot more people who've never really considered themselves people who like art or much less collect art. So many more collectors now that are collecting NFTs and properly collecting in their own way. But what does that do to the kind of course of art history when it's not validated, quote unquote, when it doesn't have platforms that are decades and decades old? This kind of popularization, where if you have 2, 3 million, 4 million followers on Twitter, you are a popular contemporary artist now in the NFT generation. So I think these worlds are going to have to kind of collide, and it'll be interesting to see, what kind of crawls out of the wreckage, whether it's the institutions that adapt, which traditionally institutions not so good at adapting, or whether it will be the artists and the culture, which kind of seems to always find a way. So yeah, interesting.
Super interesting. Do you have anything to? No, nothing to add? I actually kind of want to expand on this. this notion, because we were talking about this week, during the week as well, the idea that digital art has really brought in a new audience in a lot of ways, and a lot of people, Gian, like yourself, collectors that are interested in blockchain, crypto, and NFTs have made that a really tangible commodity, and given a lot of interactive play between an artist and a collector, between a collector feeling, I think, probably that there's also an avenue through the digital crypto NFT realm to understand a cultural piece that happens to be digital. So I'd love to, I mean, if that made sense, I don't know. It's mainly just a thought, it's not really a question, but if anyone has any more thoughts about that, because I think it's a very interesting, compelling thing for art to be able to really entice a whole different audience, because it is.
I had yesterday a cool discussion with Nicolas Logereau, and he's like the street art specialist expert. You know, he has in France. He's very well known there, and he's like anti NFT. He do not understand. He don't want to understand. But what's fascinating me is that, in fact, he was the guy leading the street art movement 20 years ago. And he cannot see that this is the new wave. You know, he was telling to everybody, oh, look, this is interesting. And people were telling him before, no, you will never sell street art. Street art is like not interesting. It's just graffiti. It's on the walls. And you have a lot of parallel to do between how street art came into the art world and how digital art is happening into the art world. You are now at the very beginning, but sometimes people are not open to new, and you have a lot of people who will have time to understand this whole approach, and then because they see it a lot, they will be more interested about that. But what's also interesting is that I had also a discussion with SF San Francisco gallerists one day, and I was asking her, why does all the tech guys in the Valley who are very rich are not into art that much? Because, you know, when you have a bit of money, usually you go into art collecting, and they were not used to the code of the galleries. They were not used to all those like traditional aspect art world. But now they have something they own, which is closer to their their choice. All crypto and geek aspects of the code they know, etc. And this is something interesting, that all those guys now have NFTs. So it's just about how an art movement talks to new people, and I think NFT talks to a lot of people who are not into the art world because they couldn't. They are not interesting about those white cubes that they are usually in galleries. They are more into crypto, digital stuff, and this is how you reach them now, I think.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Jim.
I think that's very true. I mean, one of the first rules that we learn, you know, in auction houses and as an art advisor is that new collectors, when they start collecting, they collect local. They collect what's around them, and that's the kind of analog with the kind of technology generation. I think that for the first generation of kind of internet wealthy, they didn't really have any art that was local to them. First of all, there's not that many galleries in San Francisco, and at that time, you know, like SF MoMA really wasn't, you know, as large of an institution as it is now. And then two, there just wasn't really, you know, a lot of digitally native art, and now there is. So I take your point. I think it's exactly right. This is, you know, what is local to them. This is their community. This is their culture. Like, you collect your own culture, and that's what this is. But I think that it will expand out very quickly. We're starting to see crypto NFT collectors moving on to fine art, contemporary art. And I think that they will make that transition. So it'll be interesting to see how this all evolves. The real kind of barrier is trying to get traditional collectors to like get into NFTs, because there's still so much like resistance, even from your friend, the street art guy. And it just goes back to this idea that, you know, somehow crypto art or NFT art, which is a bit of a misnomer, it's just art, right? It's different medium, isn't really accepted the same way that photography wasn't accepted for like 75 years until it was. And so that's what this is. And I think what we're seeing here, both from the art side as well as from the institutional side, is like, this is the biggest kick in the butt that the art world has gotten in, you know, 50 years. It's a wholesale assault on what is considered art. And this is just the latest time, you know, this is the latest questioning of that, which is the nature of contemporary art. So it just, you can never really recognize it when it first hits.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to just comment on that. I think that today, of course, the audience or the world is not ready for, just like Pierre and Jihan were mentioning, is not ready for the NFT process and for the whole this, because it's not tangible. And when I say tangible, it's not necessarily meaning physical tangibility, but the engagement and the audiences, like for with the street art example, I lived in Paris, and every time we used to wait at the metro station, and then the train would come with filled on with graffiti on the windows. The crowd waiting for the train used to applaud because it was a sign of rebellion, and it was a sign of something, that a message, conveying a message. So it's really interesting to see, and up until the artists are going to really look at the engagement happening with whatever they're creating digitally, they're not going to believe in it. And just like the example that Jihan mentioned with photography, it was just a click of a button at the beginning. And then when they saw how much effort it takes and what's the real value behind it, they started engaging with it. And this is where I think that the NFT will introduce a world that is more virtual even, and with a lot more virtual engagements and virtual interactions that will help us experience those projects in a digital way, but also in a very humanely way.
Yes, so good. This is great. No, I completely agree with you guys. I really do. And without getting, you know, too wild here, you know, thinking about what we're talking about, and with the, you know, Facebook making its metaverse, where it's, you know, physical, you're in the digital realm, you're a human in the physical realm, but you're existing in the digital realm. And what does that mean now with digital art and collecting digital art and having that as, you know, part of your metaverse? And I would just like to talk about that a little bit, and how does digital art now kind of fit in when we're thinking about, we are going to have these metaverses in some way, shape, or form, however they may be. I'm just interested to hear people's thoughts on that. Jihan, I know you have a lot of thoughts on the verses.
Yeah, I think that what digital art starts to open up is the possibility of having art in different, like simultaneously, in different verses all at the same time. So obviously we have physical art in the physical universe. Now we have NFT art, which, you know, is kind of native to the metaverse. But I think that what we're going to see, and not just in art, but in many cases, is, you know, the expectation even of consumers and collectors and cultural consumers of simultaneous experiences in, you know, augmented reality, the metaverse, and the physical, and the physiverse, into something called like the augmetaverse, or the interverse, where all these things are able to be experienced at the same time, where you buy a painting, it has an NFT as its kind of counterparty. That NFT can exist in your metaverse home, but at the same time, you can take that NFT and actually hang it in augmented reality, which I'm sure that we're going to be spending a lot more time on. And so this experience allows you to actually have different appreciations of that same kind of object all at the same time. And I think that we'll start to really experience life, you know, in simultaneously, which will be, you know, pretty mind-bending, I think.
Yeah, agreed. Pierre, do you have any thoughts?
to me, I don't believe in a Ready Player One. You know, this the fact that I spend all my day on a sofa with Googles and being connected to a futuristic world. I don't believe in that vision. I think it's always far more complicated than that. And what I need to think as an artist is how you're gonna merge physical and digital. How you're gonna create something interesting, not only in one word, but how it can be interesting when the two words are speaking. And this is this is the idea you need to have as an artist, but more generally as a creative when you're gonna create projects in the future. And I think, of course, this ultraverse, the way you create with technology, with the physical world, is going to be something important. But I don't believe at all at something like Ready Player One, where everything is gonna be digital and I don't do nothing of my day except sitting on my sofa.
Absolutely. Actually, yesterday during a panel, we received a question like that from Wafa. It's too bad she's not with us here today. But she was asking the same question of whether the digital world will totally erase the physical world. And my answer was, I told her first to come today, but she didn't. And then my answer was that it's not this or that. It's really both together. And it's the simultaneous engagement that's going to happen between both stories, and what's happening with these both two worlds at the same time is what's going to really push forward all the work and the digital art that can be put into that.
Absolutely. Completely agreed. I just want to check
again,
in. Go ahead.
Sorry.
No,
again, I might take the other side of that, which is, I think that, as kind of metaverse and augmetaverse and kind of AR starts to become more prevalent, I actually think that it will start to reveal the rift between socioeconomics levels. I think that if you have physical comfort, yeah, you're right. You'll spend as much time in the physical verse as you do in the metaverse. But if you have nothing, you're going to spend a lot more time in the metaverse, where you can actually have more and a richer experience and more social status, based not on your kind of physicality, but just based on the kind of equalization of the digital world. So yeah, I think there's going to be some types of pretty serious socioeconomic issues that evolve through metaverse. But that's just life, right?
Yeah,
no, that's really something interesting. Like the people who are usually the less wealthy are always like ending up at the bottom of those problematic, you know what I mean? So you think those technology as a Western country, but how is gonna be impacting the third world? We can see that, for example, in terms of just of another field, which is machine learning. You create a whole new world with machine learning based on finally data which is cleaned by people in Indonesia or in India, etc. So you have all those technology which is very, very strong, who is propulsing a whole industry, and in the end you have those new. Actually, it's interesting because it's a documentary we are working on, but it's like the new slave of internet. You have a lot of people who are at the top chain, at the top of the chain, and you have some people at the other. But that's a pity, but that's how it works with technology in general. It's always like that, right. And then you will notice that in the future, and you will track the evolution of this technology, and you will see. But this is the classical technological advance, and you have the ones who benefit from it, and you have the ones who are supporting the system finally.
Absolutely, and previous patterns from the past have just agreed with what you're saying and just proved that point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think it's time for polling.
Yes.
Okay, great. So guys, just if you don't know what's going to happen.
Poll number 1.
So Jihan and Pierre, they're answering, they asking questions to the audience, and the audience can answer directly. So the question now, because I don't think they can see the screen, Do you think that today's digital art reflects our individual or collective identity?
And so we're just going to pulse on the audience what they think.
Do we get to vote?
Yeah, if you join at can you guys see this at all? Do you see a QR code?
No. It's slido.com. Okay, you can vote with us verbally, I think. It's
Yeah, I think.
الحين I think
I'm
it's
going to
fresh.
vote individual.
All right.
Okay.
Pierre?
Okay, خلاص.
I can't really see the screen, to be honest.
Before
okay.
the next one, if
No, that's fine.
they have a comment or something, it's. I think the first one was 36%.
80, okay, so it's the last question. 86% said what? Sorry, what was the answer?
Can we go?
We're all discovering this.
طيب,
We-
now the other poll, which is
Okay, we're with
is
another
digital
poll.
art, real art?
Is digital art real art?
Yes, no, maybe.
We have a majority of yes so far.
So far,
Majority, يعني
60% yes.
is yes. Next poll.
Okay, next poll. What is real art?
We have.
We don't know what the options are yet.
If you have a
They
proper
have to
answer,
write.
you can
يعني,
put
and
it.
it's like
They can
a
write
word
any.
cloud.
Oh, they can
Well,
write anything. Oh.
Free
This is more
form, tough
difficult,
one.
of course.
تقدرون تكتبون.
One's express.
Human. Oh, yes.
One question.
Anything can be art.
Anything can be art. Creative
Good
input.
answers, good answers.
خلاص, I think. Now we can have a Q&A.
Okay. All
Anyone?
right. So that was the polling section, guys. Oh, what is real art?
The
Emotions
emotions was
the main answer.
the main answer. طيب, أسئلة? Questions?
Now we're opening up to audience questions. Could we have
Yes.
the other panelists back on the screen?
Hello. I think Jihan mentioned that we are kind of more of ourselves, whether in the physical world or the meta world. Do you guys think that if we go to the meta world, we're escaping our physical world or not?
Yeah. Are we escaping? I think to some degree, yeah. I mean, just like in this socioeconomic kind of example, I think that in a good way, people are, who are of, less fortunate socioeconomic status do have the ability to kind of escape their situation in a good way. And I think a lot of opportunities open up. Does it also have the ability for escapism? Yeah, sure. But that's, I think, like any type of drug or, experience, it can be used as an escapism. I don't know if the, digitization metaverse is different in that respect, but I, as a glass half full kind of person, I believe that, digitization and metaverse and augmented reality really creates a lot of opportunity and a kind of cultural inclusion where somebody who's in, I don't know, say Senegal, who, probably, I'm guessing here, probably doesn't have a really robust, cultural institute, contemporary cultural infrastructure, can now create work which can be very easily seen and distributed and promoted globally. And, everybody in the world is kind of better off for being able to kind of experience that. Whereas in today's world, in the physical world, what's the likelihood that a Senegalese artist is going to make it to, Art Basel or MoMA? It's just a lot less likely or be seen. So yeah, I think it's escapism as an opportunity.
If we talk about escapism, to me, for now, metaverse are not ready. By that, I would say that I'm very much. I rather watch a movie or or playing a good video game than hanging out on CryptoVoxel or Decentraland. Those places are not that interesting to me. That's really to me because of how it looks, because of the whole experience, etc. They are not kind of ready. The technology is not that powerful to like create like realistic environmental places. So to me, I mean, in terms of how you can develop your imagination, do things, etc. There is the cultural stuff that I do that are more interesting than hanging out on the metaverse. So in terms of escaping, after that you have a lot of things that you can do that can be fun. But in terms of projecting yourself, that's not the best place now. So you're not escaping something, I think.
Great. Thank you.
My question, since Senegal was mentioned, I know a couple of artists who have been exhibiting at MoMA, etc., but I've been trying to make a digital biennale in Kampala, and it was impossible, not because people were lacking talents, but just because the technology was not there. Simply because it would take them 4 hours to download something that I would download in 1 minute in Paris. So all this beautiful world you're telling us about is not going to contribute to a bigger gap between the rich and the poor.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it takes time. I think that to some degree, like even the way that we consume culture is starting to change. I think anybody who has a phone, and to be fair, that is the baseline now. Anybody who has a decent smartphone can both create art, upload art, and again, have that art kind of exist. I agree that it's not a perfect system and it will take time for the infrastructure to catch up. But I mean, it's been, how many centuries that we've been waiting for a developing world to not catch up, to be given the opportunity to be on equal playing field with, a lot of contemporary art, industry, I guess it would be.
To me, art is the reflect of our society. The art is digitalizing, but of course, in the world right now, inequalities are growing up. People who are rich are getting richer, and people who are poor are getting poorer. This is something we noticed everywhere in the world, and art is as that. Unfortunately, it's like that. But I think as we talked before about that, of course, I think the inequalities are getting stronger. I don't know if it's because of the art, but I think the art follows the society, the trend society, society. Yeah. So
I'm gonna look at the glass from a half full perspective, and I think we can use this as an opportunity for. I mean, art has always conveyed a message for the less fortunate, and we can use this as this opportunity, because I think that the Senegalese, not necessarily in Senegal, but everywhere in the world, can contribute to this world, to really raise that in a sense of awareness and really make it happen from that perspective. Just like in major other issues, art has played a role in raising those awareness.
Yes, thank you. Do we have time for a last question, or we do? Okay, anyone else have a question?
There is a question from the online.
Oh, online.
Yeah.
Great.
How could we create the digital community and make it interactive and tangible?
Great question. Pierre, do you want to take this one, since you've created such a great digital community collective?
Yeah, but I mean, we use the classical ways that we use for creating communities. You use direct chatting. Usually for the NFT, it's Discord. So this is the place where you meet your community and you can discuss with it. And after that, you have all the socials like everybody know. But for the digital community, it's mostly on Discord. I mean, when I try to, for example, that guy I talk about, the street art guy, to bring him on Discord, he's not kind of active, you know what I mean? He's not like chatting with everybody, etc. So it takes time for people to get into those community, but finally, when you engage with them, it's always cool, and they like that. So that's really nice. I don't know if Discord gonna be, if like, for example, museum gonna have their own Discord and create things like that. But the idea of having some of your community closer than just through social, where you express something and they don't respond, is something that is really linked to Web3. And this is something that you're gonna see more and more in the future, like institutions and a lot of people are gonna create their own community and gonna be engaged with it more, mostly through chat and system direct chatting like Discord or other tool.
It was interesting because today I was at an exhibit here in Hong Kong, the last day of a Tina Segal exhibit. And, you know, I can imagine that in some ways, what he's thinking about is obviously the participation of the audience. And I think that that's kind of where we go with, you know, in an extreme way with online communities, the ability for the communities to really be a part of the art and be a part of the experience, and having the experience of art and art appreciation and, you know, cultural consumption be all kind of wrapped up and scaled. So I think that these communities are maybe almost a new medium for artists to be able to play with in the digital space. And they're so important. And, you know, obviously that makes the kind of social media aspect very important. And it's going to force a lot of digital artists or artists who go digital to really think about their social media presence and how they interact, because obviously many artists don't really do that, and they don't have kind of concentrated communities. But it will be a new kind of vector, I think, for kind of culture to really think about. And I'm sure that will also eventually bleed into institutions. So it'll be interesting to see.
Last question.
Susie?
Yes, thank you for this talk. I know I work at Christie's Auction House, so a lot of this portraits of Bellamy portrait that we sold a few years ago was a real shock, but interesting to combine. My question is, I know we spoke about different alternative geographies, socioeconomic backgrounds, but what about generations, age groups? A lot of artists that are still practicing, like painters well up in their 90s. Someone like Etel Adnan was picked up when she was in her 80s, and it's now, I mean, unfortunately she passed away, but it's something that she was finally able to get in. My question is really, artists like Samia Halabi just ended up putting her works on NFT, and she's in her 80s now, I believe. Can you comment on older generations? I know obviously it feels, you know, much younger are taking control just because of our ability to understand the language of crypto, but how is that for older people? Are they able to harness this? Can you give an example of someone who's, or lack thereof?
I'll speak about this a little bit. Yeah, I mean, yeah, the growing up on the internet and then not growing up on the internet it's a chasm of a difference. I mean, really, I was just speaking with an artist today who was telling me about her troubles with technology and how it's a very difficult language, and it's even beyond a language. It's a bigger than that. I don't know. Platform, universe, I don't know. Metaverse, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, it's very challenging. What gives me a little bit of hope, and this doesn't happen nearly enough, but when you see an older and a younger generation working together, I think artists that are perhaps of an older generation can still have been involved in technology, even if they weren't growing up on the internet. And I've seen a lot of really beautiful collaborations, at least in New York City, and some international as well, about where artists will bring in a younger generation of artists or even engineers and just create relationships with them. And then they sort of explore the process together. And on the engineer side, they learn a lot of really important things and about an artist process, which helps them balance out their sort of engineering, more linear thinking. And the artists, the older artists get, educated, I guess, on the technology, but just they learn more about it, they learn more about the possibility, and it's beautiful when it can be done together, and not as like the artist saying, I want this, but them really discovering both sides, so the creativity and also sort of the engineering, more science, analytical, technological side. Really some beautiful things can happen that I think both sides weren't necessarily considering when they started the process. But that's in the best of cases.
Yeah, that's a very good answer.
Thank you. So I guess, I shouldn't answer the last question. Does
One
anyone
more
else have any
question,
thoughts on
please.
that?
Yes, one more question, please.
Oh, okay.
We've seen in history what digital art, digital photography has killed Kodak. What is your anticipation with NFT and digital art is going to kill in the future?
I can speak very. What I think is that the certificate of authenticity is something from the past that's gonna disappear and gonna be replaced by a blockchain technology. I don't know if it's NFT yet or another one, but that's sure. I mean, who can? I mean, the value of an artwork is in place in a paperwork, and this is something very strange because it's something very easy to fake, and most of your artwork is most of the value of your artwork is in it. So I mean, as an artist, when I sign a certificate of authenticity where I say this artwork was created by me, and give it to an art collector, I think I am always like, this is crazy that nothing has been done for that. You know, to me it's something that's going to be replaced, because if in 20 or 50 of 30 years, when I will be art collector and I will collect valuable art, I will not ask for like for some paper. I will have this digital aspect of my life for a long time now, and I will ask for something very which is secure by itself, as blockchain is, and that's why I think the certificate of authenticity in paper gonna disappear. If something gonna be killed, I think it's that.
Absolutely, I agree. I mean, it's an infinite game. It's not. Kodak has lost its model because it was so attached to that model, so that it wasn't valid anymore in the digital world, and people moved on. So I believe that we need to constantly stay up to date, just like we were talking today, with our identities, with our ethics, with everything that is happening with the technology, so that we keep on playing that game, because otherwise we're gonna be left out if we keep on just attached to old models that are gonna keep us away from the game.
Interestingly, Kodak's market cap is still about $425 million. So they're, not dead yet. So I think that NFTs will probably, I mean, I think it's interesting what Pierre is saying. I think that certificates of authenticity will kind of start to be baked into the artwork itself. I think that the artwork will be its own certificate of authenticity, because the idea of kind of that ownership is inherently baked into NFTs. I think that if blockchain and NFTs are going to kill anything, it's going to continue to put pressure on middle layers and intermediaries, whether they're financial intermediaries or cultural intermediaries. I think that it will kill, or at least put a lot of pressure on, kind of exclusive platforms, if anything, whether that is a cultural institution. I think the nature of this technology opens things up and literally just decentralizes power structures, influence structures, financial structures. I wouldn't go as far as to say it'll kill them, because I think that, as we've seen with, probably the most advanced example are the banks themselves, who are all, rushing in to adopt and adapt and assimilate this technology. I'm sure that the cultural institutions will eventually, but again, cultural institutions are so terrible historically at technology. It's just never been their thing. So we'll have to see how long it will take. But it is interesting to see that, Christie's and Sotheby's have, are really at the forefront of this adaptation, and they've done it to their credit, and they've done it very, very well. So yeah, we'll see what happens.
Great. Well, thank you guys so much. This was an amazing conversation. I hope everyone got as much out of it as I did. It was amazing hearing all these different perspectives on these very important things. And this is all, very new and very smart people that are talking about these things that are very much here and now and relevant and important and are the future. So thank you guys so much for your time.
تستحقون التحية.
Thank you.
شكرا لكم. شكرا جزيلا.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
شكرا بيير.
Merci,
شكرا
Pierre.
جيهان.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.